Hello and welcome to a Right Now program with Broadleaf Writers Association. My name is Zachary Steele. I'm the founder and executive director of Broadleaf Writers, and I am pleased to be joined with Mike Brown and Pat McKee. And we are working through technological issues, as most people are. So we have one body and voice together and one screen and voice. So first of all, welcome to you both. I hope you guys are doing well in this crazy time. And
absolutely.
Good. Excellent. Just a brief introduction. Mike Brown is the one visible. Hi, Mike. According to Mike's bio, he has been retired since 2014 from the Dolly Parton 9-to-5 life. He and his wife reside near Noonan, just south of Atlanta. He is the author of Sanctuary, A Legacy of Memories. That is the first in the Shiloh Mystery Series. His second book, Testament, An Unexpected Return, is out, and I believe you have the forthcoming Purgatory of Progeny's Quest out soon. Is that correct?
That comes out officially on May 5th.
May 5th, excellent. And then we are also joined by Pat McKee, and Pat was born in Miami, Florida, which, Pat, I have to acknowledge that I lived in Miami until I was about 6. I was born in Orlando, so I don't know what part of Miami you're from, and please don't ask me what part I was from because I have no idea. And then after his, according to your bio, it says after the early deaths of his parents, he grew up at Thornwell, an orphanage in Clinton, South Carolina. And following high school, he worked his way through Georgia State University Emory Law School. And he and his wife, Donna, live in Noonan, Georgia, where he practices law and is the author of the debut novel, Ariel's Island. So welcome again to you both.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. Obviously, this was supposed to be the three of us at Southern Fried Books on April 11th in Noonan. And that isn't going to happen due to the ongoing pandemic that is forcing so many things either to be canceled or to go online. So I'm glad even in this brief interview that we can get together and discuss some matters of writing. The situation that we're in kind of leads me into my first question, and that first question is, given the stay-at-home order that we and the entire state are under, not only are we as writers at home, but we're sequestered in many cases with scores of family and more noise and more distraction, more obligation. I would love to ask you guys how that's affecting your writing schedule and what you're doing to try to work around it. And we'll start with Mike.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I just talked about this on the radio this morning. The one thing that I have learned, even though I am normally at home, my four walls are familiar walls, and this is where I spend most of my time doing my writing and prep work and things like that. My wife is at home a lot more. She's been furloughed from her part-time job and her volunteering at the Cancer Treatment Center here in Noonan. So she's here more, but we're actually enjoying that. But it's just, fortunately, just my wife and I, and we're enjoying that. I actually have, you might see wandering around in a minute, my grand dog. My younger son's dog is temporarily spending a vacation time with us while he's in between homes at the moment. So we're trying to help him go that way. But that being said, how's it interrupted my writing? Fortunately for me, I had just finished going through all of the rewrites and the editing processes on my third book, which is finishing my Shiloh series. And I've been getting ready for the book launch. So most of my time has been devoted just prior to all this shutdown to getting the book launch, the book tour set up and organized, which is now kind of up in the air, obviously, with how soon we can actually begin. But what I have been doing, and I know that sometimes writers, when you've got all of this going on and you've got the news that you almost everybody's listening to all of the news and find out what the latest is, and that's distracting. So as from a pure writing perspective, what I find is doing project work. I've got 2 other novel projects that I'm kind of working on, and what I've been doing is doing background study work, prep work, because I can go in, get my research done, put some notes together, set it aside, and my brain's not being overcooked doing that. So I've kind of taken a break from the day-to-day writing. I also have an advantage of having 700 devotional writings that I've done on my other webpage that I'm going back to and doing some editing and posting. So I don't have to do any creative writing. I'm just rewriting and doing an occasional post with that. So that's how I'm, keeping myself busy.
All right. How about you, Pat?
Well, I thank you, by the way, for allowing me to appear just as a blank screen. So I actually look a little better than a blank screen, but this is where we are right now. So I have found, to follow up on what Mike said, that the situation we find ourselves in is extraordinarily disruptive. My book, Ariel's Island, was launched on March 31st. It was published on March 31st. I had 2 book launches scrubbed as a result of the stay-at-home order. And of course, I understand why those events were scrubbed. But I have found that the process of trying to get your book out there in front of people and noticed, that entire situation has been upended. So to the extent that a writer is also someone who is trying to get their book noticed, the current situation has really made that very, very difficult. Now, on the other side, the actual writing, I am extremely fortunate in that, as you mentioned, I'm a practicing attorney. And so I have an office that is 2 blocks from my home, and lawyers under the current stay-at-home order are considered essential workers. So I am exempt from the stay-at-home order. I am at my office right now. I am serving clients as we speak. And so my normal writing discipline is to get up early, come to the office while it's still dark outside, nobody misses me and nobody needs me, and I do about an hour or 2 of writing, and I continue to do that.
So what I'm hearing is lawyers have a license to escape.
Indeed.
How convenient.
Yes, I tell you, there are a lot of good reasons to be a lawyer. That's one of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's try to adjust and help writers who are struggling with this at home. I mean, now, Pat, obviously you have your out, so I'm gonna go to Mike on this one. But what advice can you give writers on how to manage their schedule right now? Is it different than it was before, or is it the same advice?
Oh, absolutely. Now everybody's situation is a little different. But I've had to adjust my schedule. It was always nice that I knew when my wife was going to be away, and that was my free time without interruption to get things done. I didn't have to worry about the vacuum cleaner being run somewhere in the house, or any number of things. But I would suggest to writers, writing is not, it's a marathon of time and effort. It's not a sprint. So take the pieces of the journey that you can do each and every day, if you're in the middle of a project, write what you can when you can. This will be over sooner rather than later. I have no doubt in my mind about that. You will find yourself getting back into the normal routine again. It's more of a matter of days or weeks rather than, months or, a season kind of thing. At least that's my perspective on it. So write when you can, as often as you can. You can always go back and pull the pieces together. be disciplined in that commitment. It's like, and I'll give you this analogy very quickly as a retired coach. Yeah, I'd love to be at the Piedmont Health Club, like I normally do, but I can't. So I'm finding other ways to find some activity when I can, how I can. I normally don't mow my whole lawn in one day with the push mower, but I do now. You do what you can when you can, and it may not be the perfect process, but at this particular point in time, I think this is a great time as storytellers to be getting little tidbits of stuff that you can insert in your story, whether this one that you're working on or some future one. Be doing it in some format. So that's basically my best advice.
Yeah, no, I think that's good advice. And then you had said something in there about this being over sooner than later, and that
Yeah.
leads me to what the world's going to look like then, or even more how we're dealing with it now. Now you started in 2018. You started the Hometown Novel Nights, which is
Yes.
focuses on local Georgia authors and brings them to audiences so that you can make people more aware of the writers that we have out there. Obviously, you're not doing programming, so how are you keeping readers connected to writers?
Right now, we're doing things online and communicating through. Fortunately, because we started in 2018, and you understand this with the Broadleaf writers, you build up a network, and we're staying communicating at this particular moment through our social networking. We're trying to encourage authors to post links about their books just to stay engaged.
Mm-hmm.
I had a meeting already today, this morning after my radio broadcast with a possible venue because, for example, Noonan has lost for this summer the Southern Literary Festival. It's going to be next year that they'll do it. There's so much planning in those things. There's just no way that they could, regroup and get it off the ground in June. So I've already talked to a venue with some other authors about the prospect of doing a author fest, writers fest, whatever you want to say, at this particular venue, which would be possibly in Warm Springs, Georgia. It's as soon as things allow for that to happen.
Right.
And the nice part about Warm Springs, it probably will be opened up quicker than being in downtown Atlanta. I think Atlanta's going to be a while. It'll drag behind just because of the nature of the community there. So, I think it is going to be over, I think we're looking at May or June for some easing. It's not going to happen. It's not going to be somebody flip the light switch back on. It's going to be more of a rheostat. And there's going to be there's going to be a time of adjustment and ease back into what we can call normal life, as much as you can call it normal. I've lived long enough to have been through MERS and SARS and all this, 9/11 for that matter. And every time right after it happened, what did we hear? The world's going to come to an end. Life will never be the same. Somehow we're very resilient people, and we will come back to some new establishment of the norm that we're going to function very well with.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that life will never be the same again because, even through this situation, we're beginning to use like this technology in ways that we didn't use it before.
Sure.
And
That's a good thing.
And hopefully, writers at home are finding new ways to, work with storytelling and such and so forth in ways that they haven't before, and that hopefully these methods of storytelling and keeping writers engaged with readers, readers engaged with writers will continue so that we're not always reliant on, especially in an area like Atlanta, where it takes 45 minutes to get just about anywhere. Not everybody wants to do that. So there are ways to reach more people. But since I mentioned storytelling, there's a question that I have been asking myself all year as I go through writing, as I read books, everything like that. And it's very simple, very simply just what's more important to the writer? Is it storytelling or is it the mechanics of writing? And I certainly have my own preference, but I'm asking this question of every writer, and I just really want to be able to ask it to you guys and hear what your response is. And Pat, why don't we start with you, since I've had Mike monopolizing time here for a little bit.
Oh, that's fine. I just want to know how you were able to get from any one place in Atlanta to another in 45 minutes. You must have a helicopter.
It's a lot of swearing, I promise.
Yeah, because I think it's more like an hour or an hour and a half now, if you haven't been up to Atlanta recently.
Well, I'm right in the heart of it. So everywhere I go, I am in traffic.
Well, back to your point, I think we are in extraordinary times right now, and there are extraordinary stories being written right now, if not being written on paper, being written in the imaginations of people who are experiencing things in a very, very different way. So back to your question, for me, it's all about the story. I love to be able to sit down and just write about characters, about events, and I let it come off my fingertips onto the computer screen as fast as I can, without regard much for spelling, for grammar, for anything. I'm trying very hard to get the story down, and I'm all about revision. So once I've gotten a chapter down, I go back to the beginning, and then I start doing some of the mechanical things, making sure that I'm following at least the internal grammar rules that I've given for myself. Sometimes I don't write full sentences. Some of us, follow other kinds of rules about avoiding certain kind of punctuation. So, but once I've gotten the story down, I go back and revise, and I revise, and I revise many, many times. But for me, it's all about the story and trying to get that out.
All right. What about you, Mike?
The one thing that I can honestly say is that I first of all, storytelling is to me the key. I have read a lot of books that mechanically, man, the periods where the semicolons, everything is what it's supposed to be, and they actually have their fair amount of $3 words in there in the right place. But it's a boring book. There's not a good story there. That's not captivating. Well written, but it doesn't have the ingredients to grip you. Storytelling to me, if you were to do the best thing is get the story written first. Focus on the story. And I was thinking of this as Pat was talking, and I'm thinking of just some novels that I've been taking advantage of this time reading that have been bestsellers, that have made an impact. And I'm going to start with, very quickly, Delia Owens with The Where the Crawdads Sing. That is storytelling par excellence. I won't tell you that it is mechanically perfect, and it's published by one of the leading publishers in New York. But Delia Owens' story is so compelling the way she wrote it. So there's one. Another one that comes to my mind. I'm in the middle of reading Sean Dietrich's Stars of Alabama. Now there's a storyteller that's made his living storytelling that put it on the page. Again, is it mechanically 100% pure? No. But is it, and this is it's published by Thomas Nelson, but his Stars of Alabama book is awesome. Just quickly, Patty Callahan, Becoming Mrs. Lewis, that in itself, well, Patty's an accomplished writer, so she probably does both at the same time. Yeah. But certainly there, and then I bring up two others, that Brian Panowitz with his books, Like Lions. Now, again, he's a storyteller. His box of crayons, is phenomenal, is what I like to refer to him as. And Bryn McLean, One Good Mama Bone. Those are books that I've recently read that I say that those are storytellers. And that's what I like to do. I'm not an MFA. I don't have a journalism degree. I've got a writing coach that I have to rely upon, and I got great editors to help me put my colons and semicolons and periods and, making sure I don't split infinitives and things of that nature. Because you know what? At my age, I am not going back to the drawing board for some of that stuff. When I was writing in 1969 and 70, 71, it was different rules, and I've been told that. So storytelling is, that's the best compliment I can get when somebody says you're a good storyteller.
Yeah. And with the books that you mentioned, since we were talking about trying to keep life as normal, for anybody who's interested in reading those, and those are all very great books, call or email your local bookstore right now, your independent bookstore, and order copies from them. Support the bookstores while we can, and certainly with both your books too. If people are interested in buying them, then contact local bookstores and try to help keep them going.
Absolutely.
Which was a complete tangent, but I wanted to make sure we got that in. Now, originally, this program was supposed to cover writing mysteries, and I've never really meant it as just strictly mysteries. Whether it's suspense, whether it's thriller, even Harry Potter has a mystery going through it. Many genres of books carry mysteries in it, and so in the little less than 10 minutes that we've got left on this one, I wanted to be able to go over that with you guys. Now, when you are crafting a mystery through your novel, are you building a story around a mystery that you've established point by point, or are you creating the story and letting the mystery unfold as you write? Mike, let's start with you, and we'll go to Pat after that.
Yeah. For me, I like to be able to, I've got a story in mind. I've got a characters and settings in place, especially since I've been writing a series. So the mystery or the challenge, the quest, the riddle gets injected because I think all readers like to have that page turning incentive. So that gets injected in the story. In Purgatory, I've got a young teenager who arrives in little town of Shiloh, looking for her estranged mother after she has lost all of the family she's ever known. So that becomes kind of the quest. The mystery element in there, I interject in there when one of the local good guys, so to speak, purchases a classic limousine, armored limousine that comes into the town. And in doing so, it brings with it a dark history that gets interjected into the story. And that becomes the mystery part. That becomes the thriller part of the story that everybody all of a sudden is going to gravitate once this young girl starts to realize she has other family in this little town of Shiloh. Well, how does this limo now play into it? They start seeing the dark side of that. And that plays into the story. So that, I interject it once I'm getting the story written.
Okay. What about you, Pat?
Well, it's almost exactly the opposite, I think. And I think this points out that everybody's writing regimen and routine is different. But I did not know the ending of Ariel's Island until I wrote it. And it was literally the last thing that I wrote. I didn't know how it was going to end. I allowed the characters to drive the plot. I created some characters that I thought were interesting, put them in an interesting set of circumstances, and let it unfold. So it was inherently the theme of the novel is inherently, I believe, a mystery. The theme of the novel is whether artificial intelligence, if left to its own devices, will develop morality. And I'm not so sure that it will. But I unleashed several characters that I thought would be able to develop that issue. One of them is a young lawyer. Another is an artificial intelligence program. And I carried that. The plot roughly was borrowed from Shakespeare, Shakespeare's Tempest. Yeah, I'm sure you'll recognize the name Ariel from Shakespeare's Tempest. So that's what I did. I did not know the ending. I did not know the resolution of the mystery until I found it.
So, okay, so it sounds to me like you're sort of covering that whole pantsers versus plotters kind of lifestyle, and sounds to me like you were working very much off of away from an outline, just pantsing your way through it. So,
Right.
If you hit a point, and I'm gonna assume that you did, because most people would, if you hit a point where in your writing you weren't sure where to go from there, how did you get yourself out of that?
Yeah, it happened. That happened many times, and I would, I think I will admit to spinning my wheels. I wrote many chapters of this current book that are in the trash can right now. So I allowed the process to work through, even though I wrote many pages that never found their way into the book. And I just felt my way through it.
Okay. Well, while we're on it, Mike, when you run into times like that, I don't know if you are a heavy plotter, an outliner or not, but when you hit those points where you run into the proverbial brick wall, what do you do?
It's actually the evolution on that subject matter. Sanctuary was a pantsing book. I had a writing coach that was helping me, and she just said, write the story. And I did. And then once we had what we called the story written, just like you talked about, Pat, there's a ton of stuff got carved out, and you found the real story inside of this big story that was originally written.
Yeah.
My Sanctuary originally was one of those 350-page books that began as a 600-page, saga that had to get trimmed. So when I did Testament, the sequel, one is I already had the characters developed and the setting developed. I did a lot more plotting. I knew the end before I started the beginning, and I just worked towards the end. So that was more of a plotting type of story. And I wanted to see how that would work. I wasn't 100% satisfied with it because I think Testament in some ways came across a little too sterile from a storytelling standpoint. So when I got to Purgatory, actually, that would be that when you refer to the word planting or whatever you want to call it, half and half. I knew kind of where I wanted to go. And I did a rough outline, but I let the characters and settings and everything just flow. And I felt a lot more comfortable that way. In a good mystery, I think you kind of got to know where you're going. A good thriller's got to know, how to get it set up, because you're leaving breadcrumbs, of clues throughout the story, and they all come together at that moment towards the end. And everybody goes, oh, crap, now I remember why that was there. I forgot that he had said that, and that's the way I think good storytellers should always be, pulling the whole story together.
Right, and I'll always think of On Writing by Stephen King, where he's talking about everything having its place and its purpose, and he refers to if you're going to have a gun on the mantle in Act 1, it has to be used to shoot somebody in Act 3. So that's the breadcrumbs you're talking about, where you can actually leave a clue, a visual for somebody to connect back to. So, yeah.
So Zach,
Yes,
Pat, I wanted to follow up on something Mike said and something you alluded to, and that is the fact that I'm working currently on the sequel to Ariel's Island, and I have absolutely no idea where it's going.
right.
I'm right now in the middle of chapter 2. No idea how it is going to end.
I have done that before. First book that I had published was very much just crank it out. I think I actually wrote it in first person over a month, and it was nothing like the final version, but it gave me the baseline for the story. I think the only way that I can personally pants is if I'm willing to write a complete draft of something that I know is going to get trashed. Because I am an eternal planner. I have to have my outline, and I have to know where things are going. And if there's a mystery, I need to kind of resolve it 90% before I start, because though it may change direction as the story unfolds. So I say that only to say, for people who are capable of sitting down and producing worthy novels from a pantsing standpoint, I applaud you. I cannot do that. I think it cranks my OCD up to 11.
Yeah, and Zach, on that point too, one difference of Purgatory from the other two books, I had made a decision in the beginning of writing Purgatory that it was going to be the third and final Shiloh novel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I believe that you've got to eventually said, okay, this is the book that's got to end. So in of itself, Purgatory stands on its own. It's a great gripping story. I love the reviews that I've gotten back on it already. But for the readers of the Sanctuary and Testament, there's things that happen in Purgatory that bring relationships together, explain situations that began way back in Sanctuary. And for anybody that reads all three stories, I wanted them to feel a sense of closure. Because here's the truth of the matter for me. And Pat, I don't know when you decided to do your sequel. When I wrote Sanctuary, I thought of it as being one book. I was going to be happy as an old man writing one good novel. And I had people, including the publisher, begging for a sequel. And I had no intentions of writing a sequel. So once you get into that series concept and having sequels, there's a commitment to keep the characters, moving forward, and the setting consistencies and things of that nature, and tying up the loose ends with an overriding arc that goes that entire, almost like a saga, that it's got to come to a clean ending. And I believe that was the biggest fun part about writing Purgatory. And from an OCD perspective, making sure every key character has a conclusion that would satisfy most people.
Yeah. Mike, you've talked about being in Purgatory so many times, I expect to see flames behind you.
You have to read the story to know there probably will be a few.
All right. Well, the reason I love doing these programs in person is because I can take an hour or an hour plus to sit and just chat writing with writers. But as it relates to this video, we are at our time. But I thank you both for joining us. And just as a reminder, Mike, your third book comes out May 5th.
May 5th.
Okay.
We're rescheduling the official book launch, but it will be officially out May 5th.
Okay.
Pre-orders will be up shortly.
Okay. And Pat, your debut just came out March 31st and is available in bookstores to order, correct?
It is, and it's also available on the ubiquitous online bookstore. It may remain nameless, but it is Ariel's Island, and it's gotten some really good reviews, and I'm really excited that it's finally out there.
Cool.
An excellent first novel, Pat, really is.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Excellent.
Yeah, I got the copy you handed me in Carrollton. So.
Good.
All right. Well, thank you both for giving us a little bit of time and talking writing with me, and stay safe and best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again. See you soon, Zach.
All right.